Action Research 1, Video 8, and this also will probably be used in Action Research 2, maybe as one of the first videos for that, so you may be seeing it from two different directions. Big picture for Research 1 and more of the detailed steps for Research 2. We were talking about data interpretation in Action Research, and that was where you determine the implications or meaning that emerge from the analysis of the data. Try to make it understandable using description and conceptual frameworks or theories that so that you can find the patterns and what the patterns mean. Some ways to do that data interpretation include: 1, visuals, using visuals. You could do concept mapping to plot the elements, listen to this word, diagrammatically, that's a real word, so that you can visualize the different components of the situation, how they relate to the problem that you're doing your research on. Problem analysis using visuals of antecedents, which is what led up to the problem, and the consequences that derive from the problem after it's happened. Concept mapping doesn't usually have the what came first and what came later, where problem analysis does. Another way in the interpretation phase of Action Research to look at is the process of ongoing reflection, and this is the most challenging aspect of Action Research. The researcher, which would be you, continuously reviews the data as the action research process unfolds, remembering that any interpretations reached and conclusions arrived at are not for all time, that they're not generalizable, and they're certainly not conclusive. You can think about how all that speaks to you as the teacher, that it's not going to be maybe even for next month in your own classroom. Probably not to say that if I'm teaching 4th grade or freshman English that I can say however it was this time would be the same for the student that I have in my class next year. And certainly not conclusive means that as you unfold the pieces that more questions may evolve that may say that first interpretation is not complete. During interpretation, though, you would consider a number of questions, and these are some of them. Would I do anything different the next time? What did I learn about my practice? Did I answer my question? Do I need to look at additional or other questions? Did I collect the right data to answer my question? Are there other things I should collect in the future to look at this? You reflect on those and any other questions that help you consider both the next steps in terms of your actions and the next steps in continuing to examine your practices. Data interpretation in Action Research is about making educated guesses or reasonable inferences. And then once drawn, the interpretation can be connected with personal experience and contextualized into, guess what, your classroom, your practice, your teaching. The interpretation provides a rationale for action planning, because you're not finished when you get that data interpreted. Now we're starting on the next part of the cycle, which means we have not even come fully around into what this implies for you as far as your practice. Action plan. This is actually the most important step in Action Research. It follows analysis of your data and interpretation of your data, and this is the step of acting on the knowledge you have gained. What do you believe is an effective choice or course of action based on what you now know? What will you do differently? Did you discover a new problem? Does something need modification? But before you act, you must develop an action plan. It can be formal or informal depending on the nature of your research project, but the goal is to take action based on the findings in the study. The findings provide insights for changing the practice, and the purpose is to formulate practical solutions to the problems that have been the focus of your research. The action plan sets priorities for projected actions in order of importance, sets goals for the actions required, lists objectives required to accomplish the goals, sets the sequence of the tasks, specifies who will carry out the task, identifies who must be informed or consulted for permission, determines the time frame for the task completion, and calculates materials, equipment, funds required to complete the task. This may sound daunting, but the action research process is generally less formal. So it may be that you, like for Mr. Rodriguez, identified different teaching strategies addressing active learning to incorporate into his teaching repertoire, or on reviewing the curriculum to determine how historical perspectives from other cultures might be included, which would be addressing the intrinsic interest, which came out to be some of his categories from his student interviews. Given what is known from the research, you must determine what precisely to do. What is the course of action? This step also returns you to the problem formulation step. Remember the cycle that we discussed previously? You observe, you collect the data, you interpret the data, you develop an action plan, and then you're back to the top again where you start that observing then what you've got. Action plans can be developed at different levels, and it could be by an individual, a team, a school, a larger organization. We know in our situation it would be done by an individual, and guess who that is? Yes, it's you. Moving forward on into your action research. I think we're going to stop here for the end of this video. Before we move in, no, let's go ahead and finish this. Reporting action research. Besides developing and implementing your action plan, quite often it's important for you to share your findings with others. You're going to share your findings with your instructor at LeTourneau, who's teaching action research to you. I will be happy if it's me, because I will have seen the progress and process you've used since Action Research 1. But we'll see how all that unfolds. But you also may want to share it with, of course, your principal, maybe some other teachers, the teachers on your team, whoever might find that information to be valuable to them. You actually could go into publishing and taking it into some very formal reporting processes, which for us will be writing up your paper, which will be fairly formal, but it will not be as formal as if you were presenting it to a journal or to a conference. We'll talk about that a little in more detail when we're really looking at how to put that action research entire process together, which will be further down the line. But just know for your big picture for Action Research 1 and even 2 is that you do make sure that your information that you've learned does go out. It may not go out very far, but you know it's for sure going out as far as your instructor and your principal, and there is certainly a possibility you might take it further, but most likely that will be the conclusion of it. The main thing, though, will be that you do now know the process and how to make that all work, and you could do action research more formally or even less formally to really help you learn some things about things that you're interested in, concerned about, wondering about, and hopefully it will make a difference in the way you teach, the way you interact with students, the way all kinds of things impact your instruction. That is, of course, the goal of action research.